All right, this was fun. It's been so fun so far. It is time for our final Athletes Unlimited Fireside Chat of the day. It is focused on youth development. So allow me to introduce those special panelists. We have Amanda Daly, the Director of National Outdoor Strategy for the Girl Scouts, where she is responsible for creating the vision for how 1.7 million girls experience outdoors across the country. We also have Johnson-Pitt, the Central Region Director for the Little League. With her role, she directs all phases of the Little League baseball and softball program within the 13 states of the Central Region. We also have Adalyn joining us. That she is Nina's daughter and a Little League player. And Cassidy Lichtman. Cassidy is an American volleyball athlete, and she will be joining Athletes Unlimited for their indoor volleyball league in 2021. She also serves as an Athletes Unlimited Racial Equity Working Group member, and she is the founder of PATH. So they join us now to begin this conversation. I'm going to begin with you, Amanda, for this first one. And tell me, what is your perception of the current younger generation and their relation to community and civic leadership?
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm loving this session, and I love the last one because a lot of the things that Matt and Kat said about youth engagement is so important to me and to us in Girl Scouts. And so we definitely see in our 1.7 million girl members that there is a great and deep passion where girls and youth really want to step forward and lead and be engaged in civics. And we understand there are some barriers there as well, right? As adults, we have to do a better job of listening to our young people. They know what they're talking about. And at Girl Scouts, we really focus on making sure that we exist in girl-led spaces and we let our girls lead, because often the barriers that we do see are, there's policies, traditions, practices, social dynamics, where young people's voices are not often heard and girls' voices are not often heard or respected. So it's really important to us to make sure that we create spaces where girls lead, where they can use their voice and their voice is heard, valued, and listened to in a way that informs next steps. This summer, we actually released 6 civic engagement badges. The election is coming, and we know it's so important that our young people are just as informed as our adults are. And so we have our girls learning about the Electoral College, learning about what it means to lead at the local, state, and federal level, and how they can exercise their voice. So, participating in panels like this is great. I hope there are lots of young people listening. And for the adults that are listening, I really encourage engaging young people in these conversations and hearing what they have to say and helping them take the lead too.
Oh, absolutely. And Cassidy, going off of that, what role do you think sports plays in helping to develop the civic leaders of tomorrow?
Well, I think a couple things. I mean, sports have always been a driver of cultural change, everything from Jackie Robinson and Billie Jean King to the way that Allen Iverson changed how a generation of kids dress, right? And so I think at the highest levels, there's a responsibility to use that platform. But also, if you just think it's sort of the basic ethos of team sports, like what that asks of you really, when you boil it down, is how can I be my best? How can I help the person next to me be theirs? And imagine if we were able to translate that from every young kid who's playing sports, if they were able to translate that out into just how they approach the world and their place in it. I think it would help all of us a little bit.
Yeah, so true. And what about you, Nina? How do sports, shape the youth as we go? What role do they play?
Yeah, I think, the opportunities that sports offer really help to develop the character and personality traits that set young players up for life. I mean, when you think about communication and organization, confidence and calm, self-discipline, and then just being part of something that's bigger than oneself. And all those are incredibly important because we have to remember that the moment that the lights go down on the sport, which unfortunately they inevitably will, we want these young people to be happy individuals who have used sport as a vehicle for greater happiness and fulfillment even when they have to move away from the game.
Yes, absolutely. And, Adalyn, going off of all of those things that your mom just named, can you kind of tell me, the role that sports played in, forming your leadership abilities?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different parts of leadership that it goes on and off the field. So, I mean, when you're on the field, you have communication. That's a big part of leadership. In my community, it's very welcoming and inclusive, and that's one of the things that I love the most about it. I feel like people care and show support, and everybody lifts each other up. And I think it's important to be involved and take pride in your community because it gives you a sense of responsibility and something that is bigger than yourself. So it's basically like being on a team, and it really relates to being a leader.
No, absolutely. Totally agree. Like, sports are so important for all of those reasons that Adalyn just listed. And, it's the same thing for you, Amanda. When you're working with young women involved in Girl Scouts, what do you observe as, barriers to the young women envisioning themselves as civic leaders? And also, how do you help them see that they aren't barriers?
Thanks. Yeah. So some of the barriers that we see are, as I had referenced earlier, that there are just some social dynamics, right? Where sometimes we know that, young boys are considered to be, let's go, lead. And girls often kind of sit back a little bit. At Girl Scouts, we really are so proud of this, that we create space where girls can lead and they can fail. Sometimes the fear of failure is a significant barrier for how girls might engage in leadership skills or activities. And so we think it's really important that, it's really great to fail sometimes. And we see that in sports, right? You can't win every game. And so we model that too for our girls, that failure is an okay thing and it's a learning experience. And the important part is that you step up, shake off, and keep going and try again. And that's how you learn. And that's how you ultimately move into these leadership spaces. And so, I think that is a barrier. It's one that we kind of pride ourselves on breaking down. And we certainly see that when you create spaces where young people can lead, they do, right? When you set the expectation high, young girls and young boys will rise to it. In Girl Scouts, we certainly create space that this is a leadership organization for girls. And when you join us, you're coming in to lead, and they do. And they knock us over all the time. We hear these inspiring stories of how girls are really transforming their communities on kind of on a big platform, and then even small local changes within their family. And that all of that is valuable, and it's all kind of steps towards their leadership growth.
Yes, absolutely. And Cassidy, you are also doing some important work. Can you tell us about your organization and what motivated you to start it?
Yeah, so I run PATH. We're at pathsports.org. So I came out of being a full-time professional athlete a few years ago, right in the middle of Me Too and Black Lives Matter and, the sort of division that we're seeing in society in general. And there was just this obvious need for greater skills around things like empathy and equity and empowerment. And I think if we're going to see cultural change in the long term around some of those issues, we have to really be reconsidering how we're actively developing those skills in our young people, or how we're helping them do so. If I want to teach a beginning athlete how to serve a ball, I don't just hand it to her and say, here, go serve. We break it down to the fundamentals. So we can do the same thing with these kinds of human skills. So we're creating content featuring elite athletes and coaches like Steve Kerr and Neko Goike and Apollo Ono, people who have had a lot of success in sports and in life, really framing those lessons from their own experiences, and then giving some actionable takeaways for kids to help them see, how does this actually relate in my own life? How do I practice these things so I can get better at them? So that during my athletic career, and then once it ends, like Nina was saying, that I have those kind of human skills developed. And then we're distributing that content through, existing youth networks and sports to be able to get it to hundreds of thousands of coaches and millions of kids.
Oh, I love that. Reaching so many people, so many people. Now, I must say, Adalyn, I have to admit, I was looking forward to this panel the most because of you, because I think that you are just the embodiment, right, of everything that we are discussing. You are learning from sports. You're becoming better. Yes, lots of claps, Amanda. You're becoming better, from sports. You're working hard with your teammates. You're learning. So I would love to know for you, like, what are some things in your community that you care deeply about?
I think, like we've been talking about this whole time, leadership. There's so much leadership that comes around in my community. I mean, you have like everybody, like I said earlier, so welcoming and inclusive. And I think everybody just cares about each other and supports each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I like, doesn't it? And I'm sure for Mom, it makes you happy to see, how sports have affected her. I know as a parent, you think a lot about the things that you are going to teach your children, or how you're going to inspire your children. But I'm curious, how has Adalyn, taught you and inspired you?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I think that when I look at my kids, Adalyn's my oldest, and I see the causes they care about, and I see just how inclusive and welcoming they are. It inspires me to just break down barriers, I think. And, kids don't see color, kids don't hate, they just want to be friends. They want to play with each other. And so when you see kids interact that way, I think, as adults, it reminds us that when you break it all down, like, we all just want to be included. We all want to be a part of something. And so that really inspires me when I see my kids kind of, on a team and being a good friend and teammate. It inspires me to remember to do some of the same things as an adult.
Yeah, I love that. I'm so happy you guys got to do this panel together. I do have an audience question. This one is for Cassidy. It said, what inspired you to be such a strong civic leader in the volleyball community?
I mean, first of all, these are my people. I grew up in this community, and it's the platform that I have. So that's the first part. And then the second is just that, I've been lucky enough to kind of make it to the top of the mountain in a lot of ways. And I feel like once you get there, your responsibility is to turn around and help the next person up. And also to be aware that we aren't all taking the same route. And it's not that mine was easy, but I have to look around and recognize that within our sport alone, we're a middle class to upper middle class sport, and we're largely white. And not everybody is taking the same path up that mountain that I did. And so how do we broaden participation within our sport? And then how do we, again, translate those lessons that we're hopefully learning as we are out on a volleyball court beyond that? Because there's probably 500,000 little girls playing volleyball right now, and it'd be really great if all of them ended up being, the future leaders of this country.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I do have one final question for Amanda, Nina, and Cassidy. This is a panel about youth and growing the youth. I'm curious through, the years that you all have lived, the experience that you have garnered, if you could go and talk, to young you, what would you say to them about, about life, what you have learned at this point, maybe you didn't know then? What would you say to a young version of you? I'll start with you, Amanda.
I would say that what I believed in my heart had value, and I should not be fearful or worried about how others might feel if I used that voice. I have 2 small girls right now. They're actually learning about voting, and I'm running in between, this and that, this and that room. And they were talking about candidates, and I said, it's okay to say how you feel about that candidate. It's okay to use your voice. And then ran back on to get in this call. Because I carry that as a child too. I wish it's okay to use your voice, because people will hear you, and you would be surprised at how many people will stand with you. And it's an opportunity to bring more people along. So
that's great. Yes, young Amanda would get that message. What about you, Nina? What would you tell young Nina?
I think I would tell young Nina that not everyone is always going to agree with you, and not everyone is always going to like you, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes, especially as women, we tend to want to be pleasers. And, as a woman in a leadership position, I think sports really help with this as well, was just that You go out and you do your best and you leave it out there. If someone doesn't like you, that has to be their problem and not yours. And so I think I just would remind myself of that. And then to Amanda's point, also use your voice, what you are, and use your voice. And I hope that I'm telling you that and I'm reminding you of that and you feel that way too. We all just try to learn from our parents' mistakes, right? We try to be better than the generation. So I hope you feel that way. But that's what I would tell myself, is just to, not be afraid and use your voice and do your best.
Great message. I love it. All right, let's talk to young Cassidy to close us out.
I think what I would say is that, to enter every room understanding that everybody there knows something that I don't. And I know something that everybody else doesn't. So understanding that, a little bit related to what Amanda was saying, there is a unique value that comes with my perspective in the world that nobody else has. And I need to recognize the opportunities to share that. And then the rest of the time, make sure you're listening because everybody else is sharing theirs.
Oh, this is amazing. This was amazing. Adalyn, you were great. Thank you all so much for giving your time to this panel. I truly appreciate it. Amazing to meet you and keep inspiring the youth, to all of you.
Thanks, Taylor.